My name is Emily Carter. I'm 29 years old, and I thought being successful meant something in my family. I'm a software engineer in Austin, Texas, with my own apartment, a thriving career, and the kind of independence most people my age can only dream of. But apparently, all of that just made me the perfect target. I thought this Christmas would be different, a time for family to come together, to celebrate, to actually see me as more than just a convenient solution to their problems. Instead, exactly 1 week before Christmas Eve, I accidentally overheard my own mother on the phone, laughing as she described her perfect plan: stick me with a $2,500 catering bill, then lock me upstairs with 10 screaming children for the entire night while the real adults enjoyed wine and sophisticated conversation downstairs. That's when it hit me like a freight train. I wasn't their daughter in their eyes. I wasn't a valued family member. I was nothing more than a free babysitter with a credit card, a walking ATM who happened to share their DNA. That night, I made myself a promise. Never again would I be their convenient doormat. Never again would I let them treat my success like their personal bank account. So, here's what I want to ask you. When your own family betrays your trust this completely, do you keep bending over backwards for their approval, or do you finally stand up and take back your life? Stay with me, because what happened next changed everything, and I guarantee you won't see the ending coming. Let me take you back to where this all started, because understanding how I got to that moment requires seeing the full picture of how my own family had been systematically using me for years, without me even realizing it. Growing up in a traditional Texas family, I was always the responsible one, the achiever, the daughter who never caused problems. While my older sister Laura was out partying through college, dropping out twice, and eventually having 2 kids by 25 with a husband who disappeared the moment things got difficult, I was grinding through my computer science degree, landing internships, building the foundation of what would become a 6-figure career in software engineering. But here's the twisted thing about being the successful sibling in a family that doesn't really understand success. Instead of being celebrated, you become the designated fixer, the emergency fund, the person everyone expects to drop everything and solve their problems because, after all, you've got your life together, right? It started small, the way these things always do. Laura would call on Friday nights, her voice trembling with manufactured crisis. "Emily, I know it's last minute, but could you possibly watch Ethan and Lily this weekend? Jake's mom is sick, and we really need to visit her in the hospital." Of course I'd say yes. I mean, what kind of person says no to a family emergency? Except Jake's mom wasn't sick. She was at a casino in Louisiana with her bridge club, and Laura and her husband were at a couples retreat in San Antonio, posting Instagram stories of champagne and spa treatments while I spent my weekend reading bedtime stories and mediating fights over goldfish crackers. The weekends became routine. Every Friday, like clockwork, Laura's number would light up my phone. Sometimes it was a work emergency that required her to travel, though her job at a local boutique rarely required travel beyond the mall. Sometimes it was a date night that simply couldn't be rescheduled. Sometimes she didn't even bother with an excuse. She'd just drop them off with a breezy, "You're such a lifesaver, Em," and disappear until Sunday evening. My parents not only enabled this pattern, they encouraged it. When I finally worked up the courage to bring up how exhausted I was, how I never got to have my own weekends anymore, my mother looked at me with genuine confusion. "Sweetheart, you don't have children of your own to worry about. Laura needs your help, and family helps family. Besides, you make good money. It's not like you can't afford to order pizza for the kids." That phrase haunted me. "You make good money." As if my financial stability was some kind of communal resource, as if the long hours, the late nights debugging code, the professional challenges I'd overcome to build my career, All of that was just a means to subsidize my sister's lifestyle. The financial requests started creeping in around my second promotion. Nothing dramatic at first. Laura needed help with Ethan's school supplies. Could I maybe chip in $50? Then it was Lily's dance recital costume, just $100 this time. Then Christmas was coming and money was tight. Could I possibly help with the kids' presents? After all, I was their aunt, and I'd want them to have a good Christmas, wouldn't I? Each request was perfectly reasonable in isolation. Each one came with detailed explanations of why they were short on money: unexpected bills, reduced hours at work, the car breaking down. And each one ended with the same emotional manipulation. I know I'm asking a lot, but I just don't know who else to turn to. You're the only one in the family who's really made it. I was making it. That was true. My apartment in downtown Austin was everything I'd dreamed of. Exposed brick walls, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a kitchen where I could actually cook instead of just reheating takeout. I'd worked 80-hour weeks to afford it, sacrificed social events and dating opportunities to build the kind of professional reputation that commands respect in my field. But somehow, in my family's eyes, my success wasn't an achievement to be proud of. It was a resource to be tapped, a solution to everyone else's poor planning and bad decisions. The breaking point should have come last summer, when Laura asked me to co-sign for a new car because her credit was shot. Not asked, really. Assumed. She'd already picked out the vehicle, already scheduled the appointment with the dealer. She just needed me to show up and sign some papers because family looks out for family, and I was in such a good position to help. I said no. For the first time in years, I actually said no. The reaction was swift and brutal. My mother called within hours, her voice tight with disappointment. Emily Marie Carter, I raised you better than this. Your sister is struggling and you're being selfish. What would your father think? My father, who'd called later that evening with his own version of the guilt trip. Princess, I know you work hard for your money, but sometimes we have to make sacrifices for the people we love. Laura's just trying to get back on her feet, and you're the only one who can help her right now. Even my grandmother had somehow been recruited for the cause, calling to remind me that family was the most important thing in life, and money was just money, but relationships were forever. I caved. Of course I caved. I co-signed for the car, watched Laura drive off the lot in a brand new SUV, while I wondered how exactly I'd become responsible for financing my sister's lifestyle choices. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was how quickly everything went back to normal afterward, as if the emotional manipulation and family-wide intervention had never happened. Laura never thanked me beyond a quick text message. My parents never acknowledged that maybe they'd been a little unfair in their approach. It was just understood that this was how things worked in our family. Emily had money, everyone else had needs, and love meant bridging that gap without complaint. The Christmas crisis was just the natural evolution of a pattern that had been building for years. When my mother called in November to discuss holiday plans, I should have seen it coming. We're thinking of doing something really special this year, she said, her voice bright with the kind of forced cheer that meant someone was about to ask me for something. Laura suggested we host the whole extended family, all the aunts and uncles, the cousins, everyone. It'll be magical for the kids, and we haven't all been together in years. It sounded wonderful, actually. I'd been feeling isolated lately, buried in work projects and weekend babysitting duties. The idea of a big family celebration, of being part of something larger than myself, appealed to me more than I wanted to admit. That sounds great, Mom. What can I do to help? The pause should have been my first warning. Well, we were hoping you could maybe handle the catering. You know how these big meals can be, and with your resources, you could really make sure everything is perfect. My resources. There it was again. That phrase that reduced my years of hard work to a convenient solution for other people's problems. How big are we talking? I asked, already feeling the familiar weight of obligation settling on my shoulders. 25 people. Nothing too elaborate. Just something nice, you know? We want everyone to feel special. 25 people. At the kind of nothing too elaborate catering my mother would consider appropriate for extended family, we were talking about at least $2,000. Probably more. But what could I say? It was Christmas, it was family, and apparently I was the only one in a position to make it happen. Of course, Mom. I'll take care of it. Oh, Emily, you're such a blessing. And we were thinking, since you're so good with the kids, maybe you could keep an eye on all the little ones during the party. You know how children can be at these adult gatherings. They get bored and cranky. If you could just take them upstairs and keep them entertained, the grown-ups could really relax and enjoy themselves. There it was. Not only was I expected to pay for the privilege of attending my own family's Christmas celebration, I was also being assigned the role of unpaid childcare for the entire evening, while everyone else, including my sister, whose children would presumably be among those I'd be entertaining, got to socialize, drink wine, and actually participate in the family gathering. I'd be trapped upstairs with a room full of overstimulated children, missing the very event I'd been financially responsible for making possible. I don't know, Mom. I was kind of hoping to actually be part of the celebration this year, you know? Maybe we could rotate childcare duties or hire a babysitter for a few hours? The suggestion was met with the kind of silence that precedes emotional manipulation. Emily, I'm surprised at you. These are your nieces and nephews, your little cousins. Don't you want to spend time with them? And hiring a babysitter for Christmas Eve? What would people think? That we don't trust family to take care of family? I found myself backing down, as always. No, of course not. I just thought, you're so good with children, sweetheart. They adore you. And you don't have little ones of your own yet, so you can really focus on them without being torn in different directions like the rest of us. Like the rest of us. As if my childless status was some kind of character flaw that made me naturally suited for unpaid labor. As if my life choices had been made specifically to serve everyone else's convenience. I agreed, because what else could I do? I arranged for the catering, put down the deposit, started planning activities to keep 10 children entertained for 4 hours, while their parents enjoyed the party I was paying for downstairs. And that's when I overheard the phone call that changed everything. It was a Tuesday evening, exactly 1 week before Christmas Eve. I'd stopped by my parents' house to drop off some gifts I'd picked up for the kids, expensive educational toys that I knew Laura couldn't afford, but that I hoped would make Christmas morning special for Ethan and Lily. I was in the hallway, hanging my coat in the closet, when I heard my mother's voice drifting from the kitchen. She was laughing, that particular laugh she reserved for conversations with her sister Margaret, the one that usually meant she was sharing gossip or complaining about someone in the family. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but the kitchen door was open, and voices carry in that old house. "Oh, Margaret, you're going to love this," she was saying, her tone bright with amusement. "We've got the perfect setup for Christmas Eve. Emily's taking care of all the catering. You know how she is with money. And then we're going to park her upstairs with all the kids for the entire evening." My blood went cold, but I forced myself to keep listening. I know, it sounds harsh, but think about it practically. Emily doesn't drink. She doesn't really socialize much anyway, and she's so good with children. Meanwhile, the rest of us can actually enjoy ourselves for once without worrying about little ones running around and interrupting adult conversations. It's honestly perfect. She gets to feel useful and involved, and we get a peaceful evening. Margaret must have said something, because my mother laughed again, harder this time. Useful? Oh, honey, Emily was born to be useful. Good job, good money, no husband to complicate things, no children of her own to split her attention. It's like she was designed to take care of everyone else's problems. And the best part is, she thinks she's being included in the family celebration, when really we're just making sure she earns her keep. Earns her keep. Like I was some kind of live-in help who needed to justify my presence at my own family's Christmas party. Laura was actually worried Emily might complain about missing the party, but I told her not to worry. Emily's too well trained to make a fuss. She'll smile and nod and take care of those children because that's what she does. And honestly, it's not like she'd be contributing much to the adult conversation anyway. When's the last time Emily had anything interesting to say that wasn't about computers or work? The cruelty of it hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just about Christmas Eve. This was how they really saw me. Not as a daughter, not as a sister, not even as a person with her own desires and dreams. I was a resource, a convenience, a solution to their problems that happened to share their DNA. I stood there in the hallway, my hands shaking as the full scope of their manipulation became clear. The catering wasn't me being generous, it was me being used. The childcare wasn't me being helpful, it was me being excluded from my own family celebration while being forced to make it possible for everyone else. But the worst part, the part that made my stomach turn with a mixture of rage and humiliation, was the casual assumption that I would never stand up for myself, that I was too well trained to object, too desperate for their approval to demand basic respect. Margaret said something else, and my mother's response made me grip the wall for support. Oh, she'll never leave, if that's what you're worried about. Where would she go? We're all the family she has, and she knows it. Emily might be successful at work, but she's hopeless with people. Without us, she'd be completely alone. That's why she keeps saying yes to everything. She's terrified that if she stops being useful, we won't want her around anymore. The accuracy of that assessment was like a knife between my ribs, because wasn't that exactly what I'd been thinking all these years? That my value to my family was contingent on what I could provide for them? That if I stopped paying for things and watching children and solving problems, they might realize they didn't actually need me at all? But standing there, listening to my mother describe me like some kind of convenient appliance, I realized something that changed everything. They were right that I was terrified of being unwanted, but they were wrong about why I stayed. I didn't stay because I had nowhere else to go. I stayed because I kept hoping that someday they would see me as more than just what I could do for them. I crept out of the house without saying goodbye, my mind racing with the implications of what I'd heard. The drive back to my apartment was a blur of tears and anger and something else, something that felt like clarity, sharp and clean, and absolutely terrifying. That night, I sat in my living room with a glass of wine and really looked at my life for the first time in years. My beautiful apartment, the one I'd worked so hard to afford, felt empty, not because I lived alone, but because I never got to enjoy it. Every weekend was consumed by childcare duties. Every major purchase was shadowed by the knowledge that my family saw my financial success as their safety net. Every holiday was another opportunity to prove my worth through service and sacrifice. I thought about the last time someone in my family had asked me how I was doing without immediately following up with a request for help. I couldn't remember. I thought about the last time any of them had shown interest in my work, my goals, my hopes for the future. Again, nothing came to mind. I pulled out my laptop and opened the catering company's website. The Christmas Eve order was still showing in my account, $2,847.63 for appetizers, main courses, desserts, and service for 25 people. Money that would come out of my carefully managed budget, money that would pay for a party I wouldn't even get to attend because I'd be upstairs managing children like some kind of designated nanny. The cancellation policy was clearly stated. Orders could be canceled up to 48 hours in advance with a 25% penalty. After that, full payment was required regardless. I had exactly 6 days to make a decision. But even as I stared at that cancellation button, I knew this was about more than just one catering order. This was about the trajectory of my entire life, about whether I was going to continue allowing my family to see me as their personal problem solver and ATM, or whether I was finally going to demand the respect I'd been earning for years. I opened a new browser tab and pulled up my email. 3 messages down was something I'd completely forgotten about, an invitation from Jessica, my college roommate who now lived in Colorado. She'd been trying to get me to visit her mountain cabin for months, and her most recent email had been specific. I know your family probably has Christmas locked down, but if you ever want to experience a real Colorado Christmas, snow, hot cocoa, skiing, and absolutely no obligations to anyone except yourself, my door is always open, especially Christmas week. Just saying. For the first time in my adult life, I allowed myself to imagine what it would be like to spend Christmas somewhere I was wanted for who I was, not what I could provide. Somewhere I could sleep late, read books, have adult conversations, maybe even have a glass of wine with dinner instead of refereeing squabbles over chicken nuggets. I picked up my phone and called Jessica before I could lose my nerve. Emily! Oh my God. Please tell me you're finally taking me up on that cabin invitation. Actually, yes, I heard myself saying. If the offer's still open for Christmas week, I'd love to come. Are you serious? What about your family's big Christmas production? They'll figure it out, I said, and for the first time in years, I meant it. This is amazing. Wait until you see this place during Christmas week. It's like something out of a Hallmark movie, but with better wine and no cheesy romance plots. Although we might be able to arrange something on that front if you're interested. My neighbor's single brother is visiting, and he's completely gorgeous in that outdoorsy mountain man way. I laughed, actually laughed, at the possibility of meeting someone new, someone who would know me as Emily the successful software engineer, not Emily the family doormat. After I hung up with Jessica, I sat in the quiet of my apartment and made a list. Not a to-do list, not a list of obligations, but a list of everything I wanted to say to my family and had never had the courage to voice. The next morning, I called the catering company and canceled the order. The 25% penalty stung. Over $700 lost, but it felt like the cheapest freedom I'd ever purchased. Then I sent a group text to the family chat. Hi everyone. Change of plans for Christmas Eve. I won't be able to make it after all. Something's come up. Hope you have a wonderful celebration. My phone started ringing within minutes. First Laura, then my mother, then my father. I let every call go to voicemail. I wasn't ready to explain myself yet. Wasn't ready for the inevitable guilt trips and emotional manipulation. I needed time to prepare, to find my voice after years of staying silent. That evening, I started packing for Colorado. As I folded sweaters and selected books to bring, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Anticipation. Not anxiety about whether I was disappointing someone or failing to meet their expectations. Just pure excitement about a week that would belong entirely to me. The voicemails from my family grew increasingly frantic over the next few days. Laura's messages evolved from confused to hurt to angry. Emily, I don't understand what's going on with you, but this is really selfish timing. Mom's been planning this for months, and now you're just bailing. What are we supposed to do about the kids? What are we supposed to tell everyone about dinner? My mother's voicemails were more strategic, cycling through different emotional appeals. First disappointment. Sweetheart, I don't know what's gotten into you, but this isn't like you. We're counting on you. Then guilt. Your cousin Sarah is driving down from Dallas specifically to see you, and now I have to tell her you've decided not to come to your own family's Christmas." Finally, barely concealed anger. "Emily Marie, I don't know what kind of phase you're going through, but this behavior is completely unacceptable. Call me back immediately." I didn't call back. Instead, I spent those days making other long overdue changes. I updated my emergency contact information at work, removing my parents and listing Jessica instead. I changed the locks on my apartment, not because I expected my family to show up uninvited, but because I needed the symbolic act of controlling access to my own space. I even scheduled a consultation with a financial advisor to discuss ways to protect my assets from future family emergencies. Each small act of independence felt like claiming another piece of myself back. On December 22nd, 2 days before Christmas Eve, I loaded my car with suitcases and ski equipment I hadn't used in years and started driving toward Colorado. My phone buzzed constantly for the first hour. More calls, more texts, more attempts to drag me back into their orbit of obligation and guilt. Somewhere outside of Dallas, I pulled over at a rest stop and made one final decision. I scrolled through my contact list and blocked every member of my immediate family. Not permanently, maybe, but long enough to have Christmas without their voices in my head, telling me what I owed them, what they expected from me, how I was failing to live up to their definition of who I should be. The silence was immediate and profound. For the first time in my adult life, my phone wasn't a source of anxiety, wasn't carrying the weight of other people's needs and demands. It was just a phone. I got back on the highway and drove toward the mountains, toward snow and freedom and the radical possibility that maybe, just maybe, I was worth more than what I could do for other people. I arrived at Jessica's cabin just as the sun was setting behind the Rockies, painting the snow-covered peaks in shades of pink and gold that no photograph could ever capture. The cabin was exactly as she'd described, rustic but comfortable, with a massive stone fireplace, wide windows framing the mountain vista, and the kind of peaceful quiet that only comes from being completely removed from the chaos of daily life. Jessica met me at the door with a glass of mulled wine and the kind of hug that reminded me what unconditional welcome actually felt like. "You look exhausted," she said, studying my face with the concern of someone who actually cared about my well-being. "When's the last time you took a real break?" I couldn't remember. Literally couldn't remember the last time I'd gone more than a week without some family crisis requiring my attention or resources. "That's what I thought," she said, leading me inside. "Well, you're officially on vacation duty now. No phones, no responsibilities, no one else's problems to solve. Just you, me, mountains, and whatever happens to catch our interest." That first night, we stayed up until almost dawn talking. Really talking. The way I used to talk to people before every conversation with my family became about what they needed from me. Jessica told me about her work as a freelance graphic designer, about the clients she'd fired for being disrespectful, about the boundaries she'd learned to set after her own family had tried to treat her success as their personal ATM. "It's funny," she said as we watched the fire burn down to embers, "how the people who claim to love us the most are often the ones who feel most entitled to our time, money, and energy. Like love gives them ownership rights or something." I told her about the phone call I'd overheard, about the years of being treated as the family problem solver, about the Christmas Eve plan that had finally opened my eyes to how my family really saw me. "So, let me get this straight," Jessica said, refilling our wine glasses. "They expected you to pay for a party you wouldn't even get to attend, spend the evening babysitting everyone else's children, and then probably help with cleanup afterward? And they saw nothing wrong with this arrangement?" Hearing it summarized so starkly made the absurdity impossible to ignore. "When you put it like that, It sounds completely insane. That's because it is completely insane. Emily, you're a successful, intelligent, accomplished woman. You don't exist to subsidize other people's choices or make their lives easier at the expense of your own happiness. Christmas Eve morning dawned clear and cold, perfect for the skiing Jessica had promised. As we prepared our gear, I felt my phone buzzing in the cabin. I'd unblocked my family the night before, curious to see how they were handling my absence. 37 missed calls, 43 text messages, 12 voicemails. I scrolled through the texts first, watching the emotional progression play out in real time. Early messages were confused and slightly annoyed. "Mom, where are you? The catering company called and said the order was canceled." Followed by, "Emily, please call us back. We need to figure out Christmas Eve." Then came the guilt trips. "I can't believe you would do this to us." And "The kids keep asking where Aunt Emily is, and you're ruining Christmas for everyone." Finally, pure anger. "This is the most selfish thing you've ever done, and don't expect us to just pretend this didn't happen." And, from my father, "I don't know who you think you are, but this isn't the daughter we raised." The voicemails were worse, or better, depending on how you looked at it. They provided a real-time audio documentary of my family realizing they'd lost their convenient source of free money and labor. My mother's voice, shrill with panic. "Emily, I don't know what kind of breakdown you're having, but you need to come home right now and fix this. I have 25 people coming tomorrow night and no food planned. Do you understand what you've done to me?" Laura crying, "Em, please, I know we don't always appreciate you enough, but you can't just abandon us like this. The kids are so confused, and I don't know how to explain where you are or why you left. Please just come back and we can talk about whatever's bothering you after Christmas." My father, using his disappointed patriarch voice, "Emily Marie, I've never been more ashamed of a child in my life." Your mother is in tears. Your sister is scrambling to figure out how to feed people, and you're nowhere to be found. Whatever point you think you're making, you've made it. Now come home and act like the adult I thought you were. I handed the phone to Jessica, who listened to a few voicemails with increasing disbelief. "Holy manipulation, Batman," she said, handing it back. "It's like a masterclass in emotional abuse. Notice how not one of them actually acknowledges that they might have treated you unfairly? It's all about how your absence affects them, how you're making their lives difficult. How dare you prioritize your own well-being over their convenience?" She was right. Even in their attempts at apology, they were still making it about themselves, still treating my feelings as secondary to their needs. "So, what do you want to do?" Jessica asked. "You can call them back, or you can turn that thing off and go skiing. Your choice." For the first time in years, it really felt like my choice. No obligation, no guilt, no family pressure pushing me toward the decision they wanted me to make. I turned the phone off and put it in a drawer. "Let's go skiing," I said. The day was perfect. Blue skies, fresh powder, and the kind of physical exhaustion that comes from pushing your body in ways that have nothing to do with stress or anxiety. We skied until our legs gave out, then sat in the lodge drinking hot chocolate and talking to Jessica's neighbors, who treated me like a friend of a friend, not like someone they needed something from. That evening, as we prepared dinner in the cabin's cozy kitchen, I realized I was experiencing something I'd almost forgotten existed. The simple pleasure of being myself, without performance, without the constant calculation of how my actions might affect other people's moods or needs. "You look different," Jessica observed as we sat down to eat. "Lighter, somehow? I feel different. I feel like I remember who I am when I'm not trying to be what everyone else needs me to be." Christmas Day passed in a blur of contentment. Sleeping late, reading by the fire, taking long walks in the snow, cooking simple meals that we ate when we were hungry rather than on someone else's schedule. My phone stayed off, my family stayed blocked from my thoughts, and for the first time in years, Christmas felt like a celebration rather than an endurance test. It wasn't until December 26th that I finally turned my phone back on, and the message backlog was extraordinary. Over 100 texts, 50-plus voicemails, and several missed calls from numbers I didn't recognize. Apparently, they'd recruited extended family members to try to reach me. But the most telling messages were the ones from Christmas Day itself, the real-time documentation of how the family celebration had actually unfolded without their designated problem solver. From my mother, sent at 3 p.m. on Christmas Eve. The grocery store is completely sold out of everything. We're going to have to serve sandwiches and chips. I hope you're happy with yourself. From Laura, sent at 7 p.m. Half the family left early because there wasn't enough food and the kids were completely out of control. Lily had a meltdown because you weren't here, and I had to spend the whole evening in the bathroom with her instead of socializing. Thanks a lot. From my father, sent at 10 p.m. Well, I hope whatever you're doing was worth it. Your mother cried herself to sleep. Your sister's kids are traumatized. And we all got to explain to the entire extended family why you decided not to show up. Merry Christmas to you, too. But the real revelation came in the messages they'd sent to each other. Messages I could see because they'd included me in a family group chat and had apparently forgotten I was still part of it. Laura to my parents. I can't believe Emily actually went through with this. I thought she was just being dramatic for attention. My mother's response. I don't understand where we went wrong. We gave her everything, always supported her, and this is how she repays us. My father. Maybe we were too easy on her. Always bailing her out of social situations, making excuses for why she didn't date or have friends. We created a monster. The irony was breathtaking. In their minds, they had been doing me favors all these years, bailing me out of social situations when they forced me to babysit, supporting me when they treated my success as their emergency fund. Jessica read the messages over my shoulder, shaking her head in amazement. Do they actually believe what they're saying, or is this just next-level gaslighting? I think they believe it, I said, and I realized that was what made their behavior so insidious. They genuinely saw themselves as the victims in this situation, genuinely believed that my years of service had been something they were generously allowing me to provide, rather than something they'd been taking for granted. So what now? Jessica asked. Are you going to respond? I thought about it for a long time. Part of me wanted to write a detailed letter explaining exactly how their treatment had made me feel, laying out the pattern of exploitation and emotional manipulation, demanding acknowledgement and apologies. Part of me wanted to call them and try to rebuild the relationship on more equal terms. But a larger part of me, the part that had been growing stronger over the past week of actually being treated with respect and consideration, didn't want to expend any more emotional energy trying to educate people who had shown, repeatedly, that they weren't interested in seeing me as anything other than a resource. Instead, I composed a single text message to the family group chat. I spent this Christmas being appreciated for who I am, rather than what I can do for others. It was the best Christmas I've had in years. I'm ready to have an adult relationship with all of you whenever you're ready to treat me like an adult family member, rather than a convenience. Until then, I'll be living my own life on my own terms. I sent it before I could second-guess myself, then immediately turned the phone back off. How do you feel? Jessica asked. Terrified, I admitted. And free. Mostly free. The response from my family was swift and predictable. More guilt, More manipulation, more demands that I return to my previous role as the designated fixer and financier. But something had shifted in me during that week in Colorado. I'd remembered what it felt like to wake up in the morning without immediately calculating what other people might need from me. I'd remembered what it felt like to make decisions based on my own preferences, rather than everyone else's expectations. When I returned to Austin, I began the hard work of rebuilding my life with better boundaries. I started saying no to weekend babysitting requests without providing detailed justifications. I stopped automatically offering to pay for family expenses. I began making plans that prioritized my own happiness and well-being. The pushback was immediate and intense. My family tried every strategy in their manipulation playbook: tears, anger, guilt, recruitment of extended family members to intervene on their behalf. They alternated between treating me like I was having some kind of breakdown and acting like I had betrayed them in the most fundamental way possible. But here's what I discovered. The people who truly love you might be disappointed when you set boundaries, but they eventually respect them. The people who only value you for what you provide will see your boundaries as a personal attack and will do everything they can to tear them down. My family fell squarely into the second category. The final break came in February, when Laura called to inform me that she was pregnant with her third child and really counting on my support during this difficult time. The assumption that I would automatically step up to provide more childcare and financial assistance was so embedded in her request that she didn't even frame it as a request, just an expectation that I would adjust my life to accommodate her newest need. "I'm happy for you," I told her, "but I'm not available to provide additional childcare or financial support. You'll need to make arrangements that don't involve me." The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. "I can't believe you're doing this again," she finally said. "What is wrong with you?" "I'm your sister, and I need help." "You're my sister, and I love you, but I'm not responsible for solving your problems. You're an adult with a husband and resources of your own. Figure it out." She hung up on me, and I haven't heard from her since. My parents made one final attempt at reconciliation in March, inviting me to Easter dinner, so we can put all this foolishness behind us and get back to being a family. The invitation came with the clear expectation that I would return to my previous role, that my months of boundary setting had been some kind of temporary rebellion that we could now pretend had never happened. I declined politely and spent Easter hiking with Jessica, who had moved to Austin partly because she'd realized she'd found a kindred spirit in someone who'd finally learned to value herself appropriately. It's been almost a year now since I spent Christmas in Colorado, and my life looks completely different than it did before that week. I date now, actually date, instead of being too exhausted from family obligations to put effort into meeting new people. I've traveled to places I'd always wanted to visit but never had time for because weekends were consumed by childcare duties. I've deepened friendships that had been neglected for years because I'd always prioritized family demands over my own social life. Most importantly, I've learned the difference between being loved for who you are and being valued for what you provide. Real love doesn't come with a price tag or a list of expectations. Real love doesn't require you to sacrifice your own happiness to prove your worth. Real love celebrates your success rather than seeing it as a resource to be tapped. My family still hasn't acknowledged that their treatment of me was unfair. They still frame my boundary setting as selfishness, still act like victims of my unreasonable decision to prioritize my own well-being. Sometimes I feel sad about the loss of those relationships, but I've come to understand that I'm not mourning the loss of people who actually loved me. I'm mourning the loss of the illusion that they ever did. The hardest part wasn't cutting off the financial support or refusing the babysitting requests. The hardest part was accepting that the people who raised me, who claimed to love me unconditionally, had never actually seen me as a whole person deserving of respect and consideration. They'd seen me as a role, a function, a solution to their problems. But here's what I want you to understand if you recognize yourself in my story. You are not obligated to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. You are not selfish for wanting to be appreciated for who you are rather than what you can do for others. You are not responsible for managing other adults' poor planning, bad decisions, or emotional needs. Family should be a source of love and support, not a drain on your resources and energy. If the people in your life only contact you when they need something, if they treat your success as their safety net, if they consistently prioritize their comfort over your well-being, those aren't healthy family relationships. Those are exploitative relationships that happen to involve shared DNA. Setting boundaries isn't mean. It isn't selfish. It isn't cruel. It's necessary for your mental health, your financial security, and your basic human dignity. The people who truly care about you will respect your boundaries even if they don't like them. The people who don't respect your boundaries are showing you exactly how much they actually value you as a person. I won't lie and say that walking away from my family was easy, or that I don't sometimes wonder what might have happened if I'd tried harder to make them understand. But I've never once regretted choosing my own well-being over their convenience. I've never once wished I'd stayed in that dynamic where my worth was measured by my willingness to sacrifice for people who took that sacrifice for granted. Today, I'm writing this from my apartment in Austin, the same apartment I've always loved but rarely got to enjoy because it was just a place to collapse between family obligations. Now it's actually my home, a space where I can rest and recharge and plan adventures and host friends who appreciate my company rather than my credit card. I'm in a relationship now with someone who loves me for my intelligence, my humor, my ambition, my dreams, not for my ability to solve his problems or finance his lifestyle. When I told him about my family situation, his response wasn't, "But they're your family," or "Maybe you should try harder to work things out." His response was, "I'm proud of you for choosing yourself." That's what healthy love looks like. That's what you deserve, whether it comes from family, friends, or romantic partners. Don't settle for relationships that require you to diminish yourself to make other people comfortable. Don't accept crumbs of appreciation in exchange for feast-sized sacrifices. You are worth more than what you can do for others. You deserve to be loved for who you are, not just for what you provide. And if the people in your life can't see that, then maybe it's time to find people who can. If you've stayed with me through this entire story, chances are something about it resonated with you. Maybe you're the designated problem solver in your family. Maybe you're tired of being treated like an ATM by people who claim to love you. Maybe you're scared that setting boundaries will cost you the only relationships you have, even if those relationships are draining the life out of you. I want you to know that you're not alone and you're not wrong to want more. You're not selfish for expecting basic respect from the people who claim to care about you. You're not ungrateful for wanting relationships based on mutual love and support, rather than one-sided obligation. Change is scary, especially when it means potentially losing people you care about. But here's what I learned. You can't lose something you never really had. If someone only values you for what you provide, rather than who you are, then their love was never real in the first place. It was conditional, transactional, and ultimately destructive to your sense of self-worth. Real love enhances your life. It doesn't drain it. Real family builds you up instead of wearing you down. Real relationships are based on mutual respect, not on one person constantly sacrificing for the other's benefit. You have permission to want more. You have permission to expect better. You have permission to choose yourself, even if other people don't understand or approve of that choice. The people who matter will respect your boundaries. The people who don't respect your boundaries don't matter, not in the way that healthy, loving relationships matter. Your life belongs to you. Your success belongs to you. Your time, energy, and resources belong to you. Nobody else is entitled to those things just because they share your DNA or claim to love you. Start small if you need to. Say no to one request. Skip one obligation. Choose your own happiness over someone else's convenience just once and see how it feels. I promise you, it feels like freedom. Family relationships should lift you up, not drain you dry. They should celebrate your success, not see it as their personal resource. They should appreciate your presence, not just your presence. If anyone in your life treats your kindness like weakness, your generosity like obligation, or your love like a blank check, it's time to reevaluate those relationships. Blood doesn't give anyone the right to exploit you, manipulate you, or treat you like a convenience rather than a human being deserving of respect. You deserve to be loved for who you are, not just for what you can do for others. You deserve relationships that give as much as they take. You deserve a life that belongs to you, not to everyone else's expectations and demands. Have you ever been in a situation like mine? Have you been the family ATM, the designated problem solver, the one everyone expects to sacrifice for everyone else's comfort? I want to hear your story, because I know I'm not the only one who's experienced this kind of disguised emotional and financial abuse. Share this story if it resonated with you. Comment below if you've had your own Christmas in Colorado moment, that moment when you finally realized your worth and chose yourself over other people's convenience. And remember, saying no to exploitation isn't selfish. It's necessary. It's healthy. It's the first step toward building the life you actually deserve, because at the end of the day, the people who truly love you will want you to choose yourself. And the people who don't, well, they were never really on your side to begin with. You are worth more than what you can provide for others. Never forget that.